echoes of the sacrificed. Elder Okoro's lifeless body lay sprawled across the floor of his hut, his throat slit open. Blood poured around him, soaking into the dry earth. Outside, the villagers gathered, whispering in hushed, fearful tones. No one had ever dared to kill an elder. No one had ever committed a crime so grave. Standing in the doorway, his hands covered in blood, was Juba, Elder Okoro's own son. He did not run. He did not beg for mercy. He simply stood there, his face blank, his eyes hollow. The chief arrived, his presence commanding silence. The high priest stepped forward, his expression unreadable. "Did you do this?" he asked. Juba swallowed hard. "Yes." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. The chief's voice was low but heavy with judgment. "Why?" Juba's fingers curled into fists. "He raped my sister." His voice trembled, but his resolve did not waver. "He dishonored our family. He destroyed her. He deserved to die." The people stared in horror. Juba's sister, Ife, stood among them, her face streaked with tears. She nodded, confirming his words, but her grief was drowned out by the weight of tradition. Murder was murder. The gods demanded justice. The high priest stepped forward. "You know the law," he said. "No crime goes unpunished." Juba nodded. He had known his fate the moment he drove the blade into his father's throat. Yet, deep inside, a flicker of defiance burned. "And what of his crime?" he asked. "Who punishes the man who shames his own blood?" The village fell into uneasy silence. Some shifted uncomfortably, others looked away. But the law was clear. The gods had spoken through their ancestors, and their word was final. Juba was taken to the sacred grove, where the rusted dagger of sacrifice awaited him. The same dagger that has been used to bring justice in the land. John, the fisherman, watched from the crowd, remembering how his own trial went down months back, the accusations, the fear, the narrow escape from death. But Juba would not be so lucky. His crime was certain. His punishment was set. As the high priest raised the blade, thunder rumbled in the distance. The wind howled through the trees, as if the gods themselves were watching. The dagger came down, and with it, Juba's fate was sealed. The next morning, the village awoke to a sky heavy with dark clouds. The earth trembled. Crops, once thriving, withered overnight. The river, once clear, turned murky and still. The gods were angry. But at whom? The people had always believed in justice. But now, for the first time, they began to wonder, had they sacrificed the wrong man? Days later, another crime shook the village. A goat had gone missing from Chief Duro's compound, and suspicion fell on Obinna, the hunter. He had been seen near the chief's hut that morning, walking by with his hunting gear. It was enough for the elders to summon him to the square. Obinna stood trembling before them, his heart pounding. He had seen what happened to Juba. He had seen the blood on the sacred altar. The gods did not hesitate. They did not forgive. "I did not take it," he pleaded. "I swear, I only passed by." "Then who did?" Elder Kofi asked. Wonder had no answer. The people shifted uneasily. They had begun to question their law, but fear still ruled their hearts. The high priest stepped forward, holding the rusted dagger once more. The same dagger that had ended Juba's life. The same dagger that had nearly taken wonders before. "We will let the gods decide," the priest declared. The kola nut was brought out, cracked in two. The village held its breath as the priest tossed it into the air. It landed. One half face down. A gasp spread through the crowd. The gods had spoken. Obinna felt his knees go weak. He had seen this before. He knew what came next. As the priest raised the dagger once more, the wind howled through the trees, stronger this time. The sky darkened, the air thick with something unseen. A distant rumble of thunder echoed across the land. And then, just as the blade was about to come down, a loud, piercing scream rang through the village. The people turned. At the edge of the square, Ife stood, her face pale, her body shaking. Her eyes were wide with horror, staring at something behind them. Something in the trees. The villagers followed her gaze. And there, standing at the edge of the sacred grove, was Juba. His body was smeared with dried blood. His eyes burned with something unnatural. The wind whipped around him, rustling the trees as if they, too, had come alive. The villagers screamed. Some stumbled back. Others fell to their knees in terror. Juba took a slow step forward. His voice, when he spoke, was not his own. "You killed me for justice," he said, his voice echoing through the square. "Now tell me, where is your justice now?" The sky roared. The earth shook beneath their feet. The gods were watching. And this time, they would not be silent.